Okay, welcome back everybody. So this is a session on the assignment briefing. How's the volume at the back of the room? Okay, thank you. Again, this session is being recorded. You can watch it again later. I'm also going to run through a few checks today just with regard to MOLE and the module handbook, just to check that everybody knows where to find things. As before, these are my polite lecture rules. No more than 5 minutes late, please. It's quite disruptive when people come in late during a session. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the briefing document. First of all, I'm just going to go into MOLE. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows where to find things. So if you go to the university homepage, so log into your account, go into My Services, and go into MOLE, and you'll see in there a list of all the modules that you're taking under your course list. So if you find 6870, have a look inside that. This is where I will put all of the lectures, all of the videos, any of the sample files, basically all the information for this module will be placed in MOLE. Okay, that's where you need to look. It's also, this is the place where you will make your submissions. Okay, your submission for this course is submitted digitally. I don't need a paper copy. Okay, you can also find the module handbook in here. So just a quick check. Who has looked at the module handbook? Okay, about half maybe. Okay, so have a good look in the module handbook. That tells you everything you need to know about the course, learning outcomes, submissions. It also has a list. In fact, I'll just open it. It has a list of all the lecture dates inside it. No talking while I'm talking, please. Sorry. Okay, so this is the place to look. Read it carefully because it also tells you the learning outcomes, it tells you the aims, and it has various pieces of information about what this module is about. Okay, that's the timetable for this course. For the SAS students, it's in your SAS Google Calendar. It's the same. So this is taken from Google, from the Google Calendar. So it's exactly the same. For the AED students, this is up to date. This is accurate. If I do ever change an event, for whatever reason, I will immediately update the module handbook and let you know. So that's where you should always look for information. Okay. It's got information about how we assess your work, and it tells you a little bit about the assignment, but there's more information in the assignment briefing document. So let's have a look at that now. Okay, I've not issued this yet, but I'll put it on MOLE later today. And this is just a more detailed brief about what the assignment is for this module. And I think it's important that we talk about what the assignment is now, so that you appreciate throughout the lectures and throughout the workshops what the intention of the assignment will be. Okay? Okay. I'll just zoom in a bit there. So, assignment scenario. The assignment uses a practice scenario to place you in the role of a practicing architect with building simulation and analysis skills. The assignment is primarily about simulation and analysis, and it is therefore not required for you to produce a building design. You will take the role of a design team member, advising other architects and consultants on design decisions through simulation and analysis. You will be given a site, a project brief, and designs previously prepared at various stages of detail. In alignment with the module lectures and learning outcomes, you will be asked to conduct various types of simulation and analysis and to formalize your conclusions and advice into a design report document. The reason for providing a project scenario and initial designs is, zoom in there, is to allow you to quickly move into a phase of simulation and analysis rather than spending a large amount of time in site selection and design. The scenario also simulates a very real position in practice whereby an architect or consultant is working as part of a team and advising on issues of environmental performance and sustainability. So, just to explain that a little bit more, you will be given a design. So you will be given a Revit model, and you will be given that Revit model throughout the course at different levels of complexity. Okay? We don't expect you to generate a whole building model yourself. So we're not asking you to act as a kind of primary building designer here, but we're asking you to act as somebody who would advise and make suggestions to improve that project. Okay. We'll get into this in more detail, but you will then be asked stage by stage to perform different types of environmental analysis and simulation on that project and to make your recommendations in a report. So we call it a project scenario because it's like imagining that you are really working in an office and that you've been given this task and that you must submit your report to your manager, let's say. Okay. So the project brief is, we keep it fairly simple. And as part of a wider university campus master plan, there is a proposal to remove the vehicles from the Arts Tower forecourt down there and to return the forecourt to its original intention as a plaza or landscape area. So this is a real project. You can actually view this if I just go back to the university homepage. If you go to the campus master plan here, you can see all the information about this real project. So, this is really happening. And we've picked this because we have some information on it, because it's very accessible to us. We can see it out of the window from here. So it's a very good place for us to start. Okay. So part of this proposal has a cafe building with additional university accommodation. And this building will sit on the forecourt in front of the Arts Tower. And it is expected that this building will be low-rise, 2 to 3 stories, so as not to adversely affect the setting of the listed Arts Tower. The brief is not yet fully developed, and the exact accommodation is part of the ongoing design process. However, it is expected the accommodation will comprise of, and I won't read all of this out here, you can read that in your own time, but this is what it will have in it. So in essence, the building will be on the ground floor, a sort of cafe building, a bit like the information commons on the ground floor. And then on the levels above, there'll be other lecture theatres, offices, flexible teaching rooms. So it's kind of a bit like a smaller version of the information commons. So that's the building that you will be working on. And you're then asked to conduct a series of simulation and analysis tasks, and to advise on the performance of the current design and make suggestions to improve it. I'm going to show you in a minute a few example submissions from last year, so you get a feel for what the students were producing. Okay. All the results must be formatted into a single report, and you will be given a report template. So again, in line with the idea that this is a practice-based scenario, I'm not asking you all to invent your own graphic layout for a report. I will give you a report template which you need to work to. Okay. Partly because this module is not about how beautiful you can arrange text on a page, or who can find the nicest font, or who can use the most colours. I'm more interested in the content, so I'm just going to give you a report template. Okay, the tasks relate to the lecture series, with most lectures having a related task. The outcomes from the tasks and your design suggestions should be related to each other in the report to form a cohesive set of analysis and proposals. Generally, each task will be presented on a series of separate sheets within the report, normally 2 to 4 pages per task. Okay, now this is really important. Although the report submission is not until after the lecture series is complete, you are advised to complete each task soon after the lectures rather than leaving them all to the end. This way, the content will be fresh in your mind from the lectures, and you will build up the report week by week. So in other words, next week you will have a series of lectures and you'll learn some skills. What I would like you to do is then go away in that week and start to use those skills to start work on the assignment. So for example, next week we'll be looking at some site modelling. So I want you to go away and practice that for the assignment. What I want you to avoid doing is to do no work throughout all of the lecture series, and then 1 week before the final submission to try and do everything. Okay? Because 1, you'll have a lot of work, but 2, you won't have had the opportunity to practice throughout the course. Okay, so that's really important. Although there is only 1 submission, and that submission date is in the module handbook, so there's only 1 submission, but I want you to work throughout. Okay? We did have a few students last year who they left everything to the end, and then they got into a horrible panic because they got into the final week and they'd forgotten how to do a sun path analysis. Because that lecture was then, it was 7 weeks prior, and they couldn't remember how to do it. And because they'd never practiced it, they'd forgotten things like how do I change the sun settings, things which we covered a long time ago. Okay, so that's really important. Okay. So these are the specific tasks. Now I'm not going to read all of these out. I'll let you read these out in your own time. But you've got site and context modelling for simulation and analysis. So I will show you how to mass a site, how to make topography, how to make building volumes, but we're concentrating more on massing, because for most of the simulation we're doing, all you need is that the surrounding buildings are simple three-dimensional blocks. They don't need to have the detail on them. Then we move into site wind flow analysis, site solar analysis and design, where we will be looking at sun path, simulating the sun around the site, looking at shadow patterns. Incident solar radiation, where we will be simulating the energy which is incident on the building and on the surrounding buildings. Energy analysis of a conceptual model, looking at the energy performance of a proposed building, and energy analysis of a building model, looking at a more detailed analysis of a more detailed model building in Revit. Daylight simulation and visualization, so looking at the qualities of daylight inside the building. Integrated shading design, so looking at the relationship between daylight, between views, and between energy from different shading devices. And then, finally in the report, analysis conclusions and design proposals. Okay. So, you will be given the template file for the report, and you'll also be given the model files issued on mole throughout the lectures. The submission details are all in the module handbook. I can't remember the exact date, but the date is there. The submission will be through mole. So if I just go back to mole. So the submission upload is not available yet, but nearer the time you'll simply go into mole. There will be an item here which is called report submission. You click on it, you upload your PDF of the report, and that's it. Okay. Mole knows what time you submitted it, it knows who you are. It will give me a list of who submitted everything and what time. Okay. I'm not asking for a paper copy. I will mark the reports digitally. Your feedback for the reports will come through mole, so you will get written feedback, and I will mark up the PDF documents digitally in mole. You won't get any piece of paper, and you'll get your grade through mole as well. Okay, so there's nothing on paper. I'm not issuing you any paper comments. We just do everything digitally. Okay. When I'm viewing your reports, the reports are A3 in size. I will zoom in, so don't worry about me marking it digitally, because I'll view it on a big screen anyway, high resolution screen, and I will zoom in those reports. Okay. There didn't seem much point in everybody in this room printing out lots of paper. I don't need that. Okay. So read the module handbook and read that briefing document, which I'll put online on mole today. Okay. If you then, having read those, if you've got any questions, drop me an email with any questions. Okay. I'm not going to take questions on that now, because until you've had a chance to read those documents quite carefully, you probably won't have questions yet. Okay. What I'm going to do now is we will look at a few example reports from last year. Okay. So I've selected a few here. They're all quite good reports. They're not all the best, but they're all good. Okay? And I will make these available on Mole. You're talking at the front. Thank you. I will make these available on Mole. And the important thing is for you to look at these examples, look at the kind of work the students from last year did, but it doesn't mean you copy what they did. There will be areas where you can improve, but learn from these reports. So if we look at this first example report, we have a nice clear layout. It's an A3 document, and this student has given us a good clear site plan. They've given us a few example images of the buildings so that we know what the context is. And then in this instance, he started with wind analysis, and he's looking at the windrows data for the site. And then he's using Project Vasari to conduct wind flow analysis here. And the important thing here, obviously you can't read this on this screen here, but the important thing here is that he's not just running a simulation, he's then analysing the results. So he's looking at what the software is telling him, and he's describing what that could mean in terms of an environment, in terms of a design. Where a few students went wrong last year was they simply conducted simulation in the software, but then they didn't analyse it. They didn't make any comment on what that was telling them. And that's very important, because this course is not just about learning software, it's about applying that software for analysis. So here we have more wind flow, and what you'll see is he's changing the wind direction, and he's taking different samples throughout the year. Okay. At A3, when you zoom in, there is a reasonable level of detail in those images. So we have more wind flow simulation. Okay, he's then moved on to daylight, overshadowing, and sunlight. And what you can maybe just make out is this little white building here is the new building, it's the proposed building. And what he's doing here, he's looking at the impact of that building on the surroundings, and he's looking at the impact of the surroundings on that building. He's moving that sun around throughout the year and looking at the overshadowing implications. And again, what was particularly good in this report is that he then analyses the results, and it's probably a bit too small for you to see. He's then started moving that building around. So he's moved it to a different location to see if there's a better position for it. And again, here, he's moved that building to a new location altogether to see the impact. Okay, solar radiation. What is happening here is there's an analysis of the solar radiation which is incident on the facades of that building. And there's an analysis of what that would mean in terms of overheating for the building. And here he's looking at the impact of some of the overshadowing which is caused by adjacent buildings and by trees. Okay. Then we're moving into energy analysis, and here we have 3 different building configurations. This is the Arts Tower, I think, here. And he's testing these 3 different configurations. So what happens if we move that building? What's the implication on the energy performance of that building? And this is some of the detail of that. And then he's repeating that, but this time he's using a much more detailed building model. So if we just go back one, this is what we mean by conceptual level. So this is a conceptual building, it's a mass. with some windows, but it's not a detailed building. Then he moves on to testing the detailed building, and this is the building model which you will be provided with. Okay. And again, he's analysing 3 different locations. Then moving into daylight analysis, and what we have here is a sort of very quick rendering, quite a basic rendering actually, not a very good one, inside the building. And then here we are analysing the daylight factor inside that building. And he's doing that at different times of the year. And again, continuing that throughout the year. And then he starts to look at that same room, trying out some different shading configurations. So he's identified from the previous studies that this room is really getting some very high levels of daylight, probably much too high. So he's then gone back in and he's testing these different shading types and looking again, simulating again to see what the implication is on the daylight in the building. And this is where, in the previous session where I was talking about the huge benefit of the speed of being able to do this, that you can add that shading device very rapidly, test the daylight again, change the shading device, test it, change it again, test it. Very sort of rapid, iterative design. So that's his report. Okay, the report is it's 20 pages long, so it's capped at 20 pages. Anything above 20 pages will not be marked. Well, I'll mark the first 20 pages. Okay, the 20 pages does not include the cover or the contents. It says this is all in the module handbook. Bibliography it doesn't include, but 20 pages of actual simulation. Okay, let's have a look at another one. Okay, so it's the same site. Everybody's using the same site. So here we have an extract showing the site model, different views of that. Then we have wind flow analysis on the site, and various different types of wind flow analysis here, trying out what happens when the wind moves from different directions, different velocities. Okay, solar analysis of the site. Again, testing the implications of the building. And then what he's actually done here is he's overlapped the various different shading patterns to define the best locations in terms of access to sunlight. Looking at incident solar radiation and using Vasari to give the detailed information of the radiation levels, the energy levels that will be available on the different facades. Okay. Again, moving into conceptual energy analysis, testing out different designs, moving into building analysis, and then into daylight simulation. What the brief asks you to do in terms of daylight simulation is generally just to pick one particular room and to optimize that one particular room. So here we have, on this image, we have a better quality render here, and we have some basic shadow patterns here. And then, in this case, he's doing illuminance studies to look at the illuminance levels in that space. And then he's looking at shading design, changing the shading, and retesting. Testing it throughout the year. And then the conclusions. So the sort of conclusions that in the scenario would go back to the other design team in terms of this building. proposal. Okay, I'll just show you two more quite quickly and then we'll have a break. Okay, another one here. This student really enjoyed using 3D Studio Max. So whereas in the previous two studies, those students decided not to use 3D Max. They just did the daylight simulation in Revit, which is fine. But this student was very keen to learn it, so he was very interested in that. So he's actually then changed the building design quite considerably and remodeled it. So here he has renderings of the site information, wind analysis, again. And in this instance, he's looking both in plan and in section at some of the wind flow effects around the site. Further wind flow analysis. Moving into shading, solar analysis. And you probably can't see it very well, but the purple is where he's trying, very carefully trying different building configurations. Looking at the solar radiation of those different designs. Then moving into energy analysis. And energy analysis at a building level scale. And then daylight simulation. So again here, a rendering conducted in Revit with daylight analysis conducted in Revit. And in this page, he's using 3D Studio Max for some for daylight simulation, and he's using Revit. Moving into shading design, and he developed this shading design arrangement here, which again he's then testing. And he's testing it and he's making comments on the performance. What you can sort of see here is he's trying these blinds out at 20% and at 90%. So I think this was a shading device which you could control. So he's testing it in both the closed and the open position to see the impact on that space. And then here we have his final conclusions where he's offered, I think in the end, he offered two possible locations for the building, as you can see here. Oh, no, he has more options. More options. Okay. Okay, one more, and then we'll have a break. Okay. I mean, you'll see the reports all have a similar arrangement, and a lot of the simulation, it does tend to look the same because it's a product of software, but that's fine. We're not particularly interested in the sort of graphic appearance here. It's the content that we're interested in. So here we have wind analysis. And in this instance, using a three-dimensional view, which is quite effective. Further wind flow analysis there. More wind flow. Then using Revit for solar analysis. Moving into incident solar radiation. And very importantly, looking not just at the new building, but looking at the implications on the existing buildings. Does this new building, does it cause overshadowing issues to the existing buildings? And then he's also looking at an analysis of the roof, because he's looking at the best place to put photovoltaic panels. and the solar radiation energy will give you that information. Then he was looking at different conceptual massing, and he decided to try out some different shapes at a conceptual level to see if any of these different shapes would perform better for the building. And the benefit of the conceptual massing is you can very quickly do that. Okay. Then he moves into the more detailed building model, and again there is a more detailed level of analysis. Daylight simulation. So using Revit to produce daylight renders and to look at lux levels in the building. Making some changes here. So I think he actually added some windows in to try and improve the daylight distribution. And then this student, he was very keen to use 3D Studio Max, so he then used the 3D Studio Max daylight simulation tools to analyze these particular rooms. And then again we have the overall conclusions for the design. Okay, so that's just a few examples to show you the kind of work that you'll be producing from this module. Okay, I will put these examples and a few others on Mole either today or tomorrow, so you can have a look at them in your own time. Okay. As I say, I don't really want to take a lot of questions now because I think it's important that you read those documents quite carefully. All right.